Today's creative AI tools allows aspiring storytellers and filmmakers to create all sorts of amazing visual content, fantastical things like aliens or cartoonish creatures or some other kind of fantastical scenario that would not be possible without a big, huge movie studio budget. Welcome back to the channel where we discuss the creative uses of AI, and as cool as all that is and as much as I love it, as AI filmmaking matures and progresses, if it's going to be taken seriously, we have to create material that doesn't necessarily scream, "Hey, I'm AI." And that's particularly true when it comes to people. As much as we love our Tess, she does kind of scream AI.
What are you suggesting? That I'm not real enough? I think you and I need to have a conversation, Bob.
Today we're going to focus on some of the latest models that focus on realism to create people that look a little bit more realistic. And look at a few other scenarios where, particularly in filmmaking, realism is going to make a big, huge difference. We're going to be doing all of this comparison over on the OpenArt platform, who is the sponsor of this video, and we're going to be looking at 7 different models. But I'm going to show you examples of all of them so you can get the general idea of the aesthetic of these models and how they differ from one another and when they might be useful for you. One of the models we are not going to be looking at is Flux Dev, because if you've worked in this space for a while, you already know all about Flux Face and Flux Chin, and that's what we're trying to avoid.
I'm really going to need you to stop pointing it.
I've just been advised to maybe not use Tess as an example so much anymore, which is fine because we're moving on. So the models we will be looking at are starting off with OpenArt's brand new photorealistic model, which is designed specifically to go after things like Flux Face or other things that scream AI. We'll also be looking at Flux Context Max, Seed Dream 3.0, Quinn Image, Google Imagen 4, Flux Crea, and HiDream. I want to show you how I conducted the test first of all, and then we're going to walk through some of the examples. Basically, I had 7 different tabs open on OpenArt, and they all were set up with the same prompt and the same aspect ratio, but just different models. And the reason I set up 7 different tabs is because if I did them repeatedly on one tab, I'd have to keep resetting the aspect ratio and the number of images I want. So we're going to start off with some examples of people, and we've got the same prompt for every one, and it is a cute woman in a blue and purple shirt that says Bob Doyle Media, blue and purple bow in her hair, V-neck, cleavage, flirty, taking a selfie. And I've also clicked auto enhance on every one of these pages just to flesh out the prompt a little bit, give it a little bit more aesthetic detail since I'm not great at that. So they'll all be auto enhanced. Let's take a look at OpenArt's photorealistic model and see what we get. I chose the tall orientation, by the way, because most selfies are taken with that. So to mimic the idea that this was taken on a phone, I chose that aspect ratio. But all the other examples we're going to do today are going to be landscape. Here are our first few examples from OpenArt. Let's focus mostly on the face and the aesthetics of the skin. We don't have that flux chin, that dimple. We don't have that overall thing that screams AI. We've got more little imperfections in the skin, like little marks here and here and here on her face. There we've got a good Bob Doyle there. Now I have found that this model does tend to lean more towards Asian. So if I was to say something like a cute American blonde. And so this is what I'm talking about. This kind of output here, except for the misspelled words on the shirt, does not scream AI. The face just doesn't have that AI look. And just overall with the colors and the aesthetics in general, I just find it's a completely different look than what we're used to with the Flux Dev model. Now let's move on to Flux Context Max. Of course, the context models allow you to add reference images. I'm not doing that with any of these because not all models will support it, and we want to see what the model does by itself. Okay, so here's Flux Context Max. It's a freaking beautiful image, and I would say that it looks more natural than straight up like Flux Dev AI, but it is pretty processed looking. Here we've got a little bit of AI weirdness with an extra hand. The spelling is better with this model, but this is not even a realistic image here. It's more of a cartoon. And I think this one also kind of just says AI, even with the pose itself. It's a great image. I'm not saying it's not a great image. I'm just saying in terms of realism and something that people would not immediately suspect is AI, this probably says a little bit more AI than real. All right, let's take a look at Seed Dream. I actually just did a video on the Seed Dream model, and it is excellent. But in this case, it doesn't give us a real looking image. It gives us sort of an illustrated image. I love the energy and the spirit of these images. I mean, I'd love to animate them, which is so easy here in OpenArt. If I wanted to, I could just click this button here, go image to video. Here I'm going to use the Seed Dance model and say girl is dancing in the meadow with her phone, camera cut to view from above because Seed Dance supports that. So we get this, she's dancing in the meadow. It looks fantastic. And we're even going to cut the camera to the above shot. I love the Seed Dance model. It's freaking Awesome. Quinn is actually one of my favorite models. I think it looks amazing, and I'm not the only one. You've probably seen a lot of videos on it. The output is stunning. Again, we are leaning in a certain ethnic direction, but we have got the same sort of spirit. Google Imagen 4, another great model that gets a lot of attention recently because of its fantastic attention to realism. And absolutely, this is more realistic than AI. I love the colors, the spirit of it. The Bob Doyle Media is spelled correctly. Gotta love that. By the way, the reason I put in a bow in their hair is so that we'll be sure to include the face in the image, because sometimes if you focus on a shirt or cleavage or something like that, that's what it focuses on. So I just wanted to make sure the whole girl got in there. But these are fantastic images, and I do think they look totally realistic. Flux Crea also got my attention when it came out a couple of weeks ago because of its interesting aesthetic. It's based on the Flux model, of course, and it gives us varying results. And in this case, it gave us a cartoon illustration, which is the first time that's happened to us here. But they're fun, they spell the words right, but it's not exactly what I was looking for in terms of realism. Another popular model is the High Dream model, which I haven't really played with that much until I was doing this test, and it does do very impressive things. It's a model worth playing with. Also looks totally amazing. These look real, they look like real women, they don't look crazy over the top, you know. This is right up there. As I say, I don't have examples of every prompt for every image. That would just take forever. And this is when I was just first starting out. So to prompt this initial test image, I actually uploaded a picture of myself and had it make a prompt out of what it saw. And here is the OpenArt example. So lots of like imperfections, if you will, in the face. It makes it look a lot more realistic. We don't have the Flux chin or any of that. This is the Flux Context Max. It is a little bit unrealistic looking with the eyes and the glow and the skin texture and all of that. We have the Seed Dream 3.0 model, which I think is kind of right between there. The eyes are a little bit big to be real, but it looks way more realistic than the other and more on par with this first one here in terms of how real it looks. Here we're just comparing three different images, and a cat is sleeping next to a tennis racket and dirty tennis ball on a tennis court after a rainstorm, puddles of water. Here is OpenArt Photorealistic model. Just a reminder, it's sleeping. We've got the dirt on the tennis ball. What I'm not necessarily seeing is puddles of water. Here we have Flux Crea, which is a much lower resolution. It just doesn't have that realism of the other. The rain kind of looks fakey. And this is Flux Context Max, which is, I think, again, good. The rain is a little bit weird. We do have the puddles. This is a good image too. But this image basically looks real too. I think probably more than that one. But I think this one really looks real. The prompt is close-up of an old woman holding a purple tulip up to her nose to smell it, and we see a bee hiding within the petals. So here is OpenArt Photorealistic. We've got the bee in the petals. We've got the hairs on her chin and under her face. A lot of realistic detail here. Here is the Flux Context Max, also good. We've got a lot of detail here. We've got the bee in the nose, looks fantastic. And this is Flux Crea. And although the skin looks a little waxy here, I think it's still a neat little image. The detail on the bee and the flower looks beautiful. Let me just be clear, we're not really here to judge a winner or anything. All these models have their strengths. They're all great. I just want to show you a variety. Now this prompt here is a little too long to read here. Basically a portrait with elegance and grace. We have the Quinn model here, which looks amazing. Here is the Flux Crea model, the Flux Context model, and the OpenArt Photorealistic model, which again is the highest resolution of all of them here. The Flux Context model didn't really go for realism. It looks more like a painting. And the Flux Crea model kind of aged it a little bit. Still looks good though. It's just not necessarily as realistic as perhaps this. I just changed the prompt by adding American red-haired woman to get a little bit more specific. Here's the OpenArt Realistic. You can see the hairs on her chin, the imperfections on her face here. Here is the Flux Crea model, which again stylized it a bit, and the High Dream model, which also stylized it, made it more of a portrait more than realistic. Okay, here the prompt is close-up of a young man crawling through a very small opening of a cave. One of his arms and his head is through, and he is covered with wet mud. Here's the High Dream model. Lots of good detail. Looks real to me.
Wow, this is a lot harder than I thought. Oh well. Only 57 miles to go.
This is the Imagen 4 model. I think it's a little weird with the mud. This just doesn't look as realistic to me.
Any chance you could give me a hand here? I think I'm being pulled down by a scorpion and I could really use your help.
Here's Flux Context Max. Gross, but real. And here's the OpenArt Photorealistic. It's not as muddy as some of the others. The mud's up here. But again, we've got a whole different quality to the aesthetic. And to me, it seems a little bit more like somebody just snapped this with a camera that they were carrying rather than like a professional photo shoot. Here's Flux Crea. Again, a smaller output, pretty dark in there. And here's Seed Dream, another great one. Looks realistic, great mud, really like this one. Here is close-up of a woman dressed as Betty Boop, looking flirty at the camera at a wild party. So here's OpenArt Photorealistic. You can tell that they're really staying away from any kind of copyrighted or trademarked material and trying to keep it real. So we're just a close approximation to what if Betty Boop didn't maybe wear her trademarked copywritten stuff and looked more like this. Then we have the Flux Crea model, which does a very interesting job of creating a woman dressed as Betty Boop. Actually, as bizarre as this is, it still kind of looks realistic to me. Here's the Flux Context Max, which gives it more of a overall cartoony feel here, especially in the face and the eyes, but still an interesting image. Here is macro photography. A black widow spider and an earthworm are in a cage fight. Here's Imogen 4. We've got the cage, and I guess they're all sort of in a fight. Here's Quinn image. We've got some strange legs on the earthworm. Hydra. Nobody's really got the black widow markings correct. Here's Flux Context Max. The cage is a glass cube. And here is OpenArt Photorealistic. A cinematic Dutch angle of a battered pirate ship firing cannons in a battle. Pirates are manning the weapons and huge waves are crashing over the side of the ship. Here is Sea Dream. It is gorgeous and we've got a lot of action going on. Here is Quinn. It's like they're fighting Sea Dream. Here's Sea Dream versus Quinn. Who will win? Who will win? Here's Imogen 4. We definitely see more of the overall ship here. And here's High Dream. Really cool detail on the wood texture and all of that. And here's OpenArt Photorealistic. It's got a lot less detail. It's not as fantastical as the others because it's really trained on being real. And this, not real. And finally, a family is at a picnic eating a sandwich while sitting on a red and white checkerboard blanket. Standing over them is a large grizzly bear, but they are unaware. Let's start with Sea Dream here. This looks good. We've got a little less detail in the face and all that because it's a lower resolution image, but we do have the bear sitting there. And I don't know if they're aware or not. Here we have High Dream. Maybe the sandwiches are a little weird, but other than that, it looks good. Imogen 4. Here's Quinn, but where are their parents? Here's Flux Context Max. Got a little bit of a different feel, a little darker, not quite as much detail here. And finally, OpenArt Photorealistic. So as I say, there are so many photorealistic models to choose from. I mean, we barely scratched the surface. Again, I chose those because these are some of the more recent models that are getting the most attention, but you can see that there's a wide variety of styles and they each have their strengths. And if you found yourself kind of stuck in the Flux world for one reason or another, I invite you to maybe expand your horizons and try things more realistic and see how they translate into video and film. If these are the types of tools and techniques you like to learn about, well, why not subscribe to this channel? Because this is what we cover all the time.
If you subscribe now, I will not look for you. I will not pursue you. But if you do not, I will look for you. I will find you. And I